Hello and thanks for joining me again on another exciting outdoor edition of the Rehab Corner. In today's video I want to talk about an issue that came up to me yesterday, and this is why to use Wimpy yellow Therabands. Okay, I am notorious for using all the Wimpy yellow Therabands in the clinic. And if you don't know about Theraband, yellow is almost the lightest resistance you can use. There's a clear gray kind of color Theraband, but no one uses that ever. Never seen it. I'm the only one that's used it. So why would I be using this Wimpy Theraband? Certainly there isn't a single person who walks in who is so weak that they need a yellow Theraband to strengthen, right? This question is a fair question if your underlying assumption is that the reason people come to PT is to strengthen. Okay? If the assumption, however, is that people come to PT to gain awareness of how to activate certain muscles that can keep the function of other muscles in balance, then a yellow Theraband can actually be harder than the green or red Therabands, which are more resistance than it. So what the heck do I mean by any of that? So in my last video I talked a little bit about the concept of referencing, right? And referencing means that you have some sort of area of your body which is in contact with your environment in some way. So if you're standing, you're mainly referencing through your feet, right? Your ears and your eyes are also interacting with your environment. The sense of your joints as they contact each other, right? The ball in the socket of the hip creates pressure on certain receptors in your hip socket, for instance, right? And that gives you input about where you are in space. That's a reference. Okay, so hopefully the ball's in the socket, which isn't always the case, but I digress. So we said that being able to reference would give you more information about where you are in space. So if I'm standing here, I have my 2 points of reference in my feet, and if I put my hands down here, I immediately have 4 points of reference. And we said that the hands get much more sensory information than the feet, so the area in the brain that's represented by these hands in your somatosensory cortex, the area of your brain that integrates and receives that information about your senses, is much larger for the hands, right? So you get a ton of information, exponential increase just by doing that. Okay, so in a way, if we're thinking on this strengthening side of things, doing this, holding your body weight like this, would probably be considered harder than reaching forward with your arms in space, right? The amount of resistance to my hands pushing away from me there is 0. However, whatever this percentage of my body weight to hold it up here, let's say it's 30-40% of my body weight or less, it's still much more resistance. So if my underlying assumption is that strengthening is the issue, then yes, this is the first step. This is a subsequent step because I've increased the resistance from 0 to some percentage of my body weight. However, if I'm saying that I need to learn how to use these serratus muscles, these shoulder blade muscles that help me reach forward with my hands and pull my rib cage back, right? That sort of thing. I'm trying to increase the activity of those, and I don't know how to do it. Giving me more points in contact with my environment is going to give me more information about where my body is in space. And so that is actually going to make it easier to activate that muscle because I'm getting more information in. So in that example, this is actually a regression. It's a subsequent step, or it's a prior step to this, which is a subsequent step. Now, if you're reaching for something on a shelf, you want to be able to reach up with nothing in your hand, grab it, and come back down. So what you're manipulating is not going to be necessarily part of your environment, except for when it's on the shelf, but it's going to be separate. So the end game for most upper body, upper extremity, arm kind of stuff is to move it in space without necessarily a reference for where your body is via contact with that extremity, okay? So that's our end game. Now, this is where the yellow resistance band comes into play, okay? A yellow resistance band is very light. So if I hook this under my body and I'm doing that simple 2-arm reach, this gives me a little bit of information about where my hands are in space. It gives me a little bit of feedback for doing this motion of pushing my arms and shoulder blades forward. However, I get none of that here. So if I had a stronger band, which was a red band or a green band, I'm actually getting more information about where I am, and that's actually easier. So I might start someone out with a red Theraband after progressing from something that has more points of contact with the body held in a more stable position, and this might be just before they get to go without any resistance at all. So I'm going to show you a quick progression here. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to show you a quick progression here of this double arm reach kind of thing that I would do. So I'm going to take a seat here and I put my back up against something. I have my feet on the ground. I have my butt on the ground, right? My sit bones are on the ground. And right now I have a ton of contact because I have my butt, heels, and back on the wall. Okay, then I might take this band, hook it on something or put it around my back, and then do a double arm reach with a little bit of a breath out. Then the abdominals come in. They start to act as a point of reference too, because I'm going to make sure I have them anchoring my core and rib cage where I want it during this exercise. But meanwhile, I have a ton of information about where I am in space. My body is going to have no issue holding itself here because it's maximally supported. Okay, so that's that. My next progression from that might be something like the standing that I showed you. So hands come onto a surface. Okay, I'm going to reach forward with my arms, but they're fixed, so that means that my rib cage comes back. I get into that position. Now I have hands and feet as a reference. So I don't have quite as much reference, but I still have my hands, which is a lot. Okay, and I have my feet, which I'm going to need in the end where I'm doing upright activities. Then we get the Theraband out. Now my back is not. The only real point of contact I have is my feet and a little bit from the band here. I did this just a second ago. I'm reaching. Okay, now I need to know that when I reach, I also move back in my rib cage. Okay, I have less feedback from a stable surface, so I really need to know how to do that in my brain to shift back with the rib cage as I reach, because especially with this left hand, if I want to reach up and grab something, I need to come back a little bit through my rib cage in order to get there. Okay, and then the last progression, like we talked about, is going to be reaching forward, okay, or standing on one leg, reaching forward. Standing on one leg with the eyes closed, reaching forward, right? Taking away points of reference, putting earplugs in my ears, closing my eyes, standing on one leg, spinning around and reaching. Can't do it, so I'm not going to show you. But that's the idea, right? So if we're thinking strengthening, this would be a regression, an earlier step. If we're thinking re-educating muscles to balance the function of other muscles using reference points, then actually this light band could be the last step in an exercise progression because it gives you a little bit of reference, but it's not quite as much as something that has either greater resistance or is a more stable surface or is an exercise that has multiple points of contact involved. So that's the general gist. That's about all I got to say for today's video. So hope that makes sense. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them. And I'm not saying that strengthening is not important. Strengthening is also important, but you want to have the right muscles working in the right ratios before you start adding any sort of appreciable load to it. If your brain doesn't know how to do it, then you shouldn't be doing it, okay? Because that's just going to bring you further outside of balance. It's going to destabilize the system and make you weaker, okay? So that's it for today. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Greg Chaplin for the Rehab Corner. Go out and get yourself a yellow Theraband and have a great time.